You walk into a coffee shop, and even though it's half empty, you don't sit right next to another person. You slide your bag onto the empty chair beside you at a lecture hall. You leave a jacket draped over your seat on a train just to step away for 5 minutes. None of this is politeness. None of this is random. But the real reason your body does this is far stranger than simple habit. You are marking territory. And you have been doing it your entire life without ever once being taught how. You still mark territory like your ancestors did. You just don't use scent anymore. Start with a term most people have never heard outside of a biology class. Researcher Robert Ardrey popularized the idea of the territorial imperative, arguing that the drive to claim, defend, and signal ownership over a space is one of the oldest, most deeply embedded behaviors across the animal kingdom. Wolves scent mark their range, birds sing to announce their claim on a tree, big cats scratch bark to leave a visible warning. And for a species that lost its ability to mark territory with scent millions of years ago, humans had to find other ways to say the same thing without saying anything at all. So what does a human do instead of marking a tree? Researcher Edward T. Hall spent years studying what he called proxemics, the invisible rules governing how humans use physical space and distance. Hall discovered that people carry around what amounts to an invisible personal bubble, roughly an arm's length in most casual settings, and violating that bubble triggers a measurable stress response, even from someone who means no harm at all. This bubble isn't consistent across all cultures, and it isn't random either. It appears to be a modern echo of something much older, the same instinct that once helped a small group of early humans avoid unnecessary conflict over limited space and limited resources. Here's where it gets interesting. You don't just protect your own body's bubble, you extend that bubble to objects. Researcher Erwin Altman studied what he called territorial behavior in humans directly and identified something called a marker, any object placed to signal ownership of a space, even temporarily, a jacket on a chair, a laptop bag on a library table, a towel on a beach lounge chair. None of these objects can physically stop another person from sitting there, and yet, across almost every culture studied, people respect these markers with a consistency that borders on the automatic. Altman found that violating someone else's territorial marker, even briefly, tends to produce visible discomfort in both parties, the intruder and the person whose claim was crossed. Why would an object hold that much invisible power? Because for most of human history, territory wasn't abstract, it was survival. A specific patch of land near fresh water, a cave with a defensible entrance. A hunting ground your group knew intimately, while a rival group did not. Researcher Napoleon Chagnon spent decades studying territorial behavior among indigenous groups in the Amazon and documented how deeply territorial disputes were tied to access to resources, and how elaborate the signals of ownership could become, from cleared boundaries to specific paths that only group members were expected to use. Marking territory wasn't decoration. It was communication that prevented violence before it started. This is the part that should genuinely surprise you. Territorial marking isn't primarily about excluding others through force. It's about avoiding conflict altogether. Researcher John Archer, who studied animal and human territorial behavior extensively, found that clear, respected boundaries actually reduce aggression overall, because they eliminate the constant, exhausting negotiation of who belongs where. A wolf that scent marks its territory rarely needs to fight over it, because the marking itself does the negotiating in advance. Your jacket on that train seat is doing something remarkably similar. It's settling a dispute before it can even begin. Now think about how much of your daily environment is shaped by this invisible instinct. The same seat you gravitate toward in every classroom, every meeting room, every family dinner, without ever being assigned it. The quiet irritation you feel when you return to find someone sitting in your usual spot, even though no rule anywhere says it belongs to you. The instinctive way you angle your body, spread your belongings, or claim an armrest on an airplane. None of these behaviors were taught to you directly. They emerged, fully formed, from a survival system built for a world where losing your claim to a space could mean losing access to food, water, or shelter itself. There's a modern twist to this story that makes it even stranger. Territory today isn't only physical anymore. Researcher Sherry Turkle, who studies the psychology of digital spaces, has noted how people extend territorial behavior into online environments, defending their social media profiles, their usernames, even their digital avatars, with an intensity that closely mirrors physical territorial defense. A comment on your post that feels like an intrusion. A username someone else tries to claim that feels, irrationally, like theft. Your ancestors never had a digital world to defend, but the underlying wiring didn't know the difference. It simply found a new frontier to apply the same old rules to even something as small as your desk at work, reveals this instinct in miniature. the photo you place on it, the specific arrangement of your things, the quiet tension you feel if a coworker rearranges your space without asking, even with good intentions. None of this is really about the objects themselves. It's about a much older signal, quietly saying, this space belongs to someone, and that someone is me. So the next time you find yourself instinctively placing a bag on an empty seat, angling your body slightly away from a stranger sitting too close, or feeling a small flicker of irritation when your usual spot has been taken, understand what's actually happening beneath the surface. You are not being territorial in some petty, modern sense. You are running an ancient negotiation system, one that has been quietly preventing conflict and organizing space among humans for longer than history itself has been recorded. You walk into a coffee shop, and even though it's half empty, you don't sit right next to another person. It feels like a small, meaningless choice, the kind you'd never think twice about, but it isn't meaningless at all. It's a signal older than language, still being sent every single day, in every room you enter, without a single word ever needing to be spoken.